When you're building a home theater, cabling is one of those things that is obviously critical. You can't have a home theater without cabling. But man, it can be a pain because you've got to get it right. Like you've got to use the correct type of wire, you've got to use the right gauge of wire. If it's in wall, it has to be fire rated. Like there's all these different things. But then on top of that, cabling can be a mess, especially if the cable is visible. I hate cabling. I mean, I love what it does, but I hate seeing wires. I don't like it. I want them to be invisible. I want them out of my eyesight. And so when I built my basement dedicated home theater, I was lucky because it was an unfinished basement. And so I was able to go in and run all of the wiring before the sheetrock went up. And so all of the cabling is hidden. Now I'm building my tiny home theater in a bedroom that is obviously finished. So what do I do for the cabling? And what makes this theater particularly challenging is the number of speakers that I'm putting in here. Now, if I were just doing a 5.1 system, that'd be easy. I'd have my 3 speakers in the front, 2 sides, and a subwoofer. Easy. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing a 7.1.4. Actually, spoiler alert, it's actually going to be a 7.2.4 eventually. So stay tuned. So I've got 11 speakers plus 2 subwoofers. How do I manage that? Okay, so this is what I decided to do. There is a product out there. Well, there's lots of variations of this. It's called Cable Track or Cable Raceway, and it's typically extruded plastic, and you can run the cable through it and then attach it to your wall. Now, the challenge with this is that, first of all, it sticks out, so it's visible, but you can paint it the same color as your wall, and so it kind of helps hide it a little bit that way. So what I initially intended to do in this room was to use Cable Raceway for all of the speakers. My plan was to run Cable Raceway along the baseboards and then up the wall for my 4 ear level speakers. And then my plan was to run Cable Raceway up this corner and then along this corner, where the ceiling meets the wall, along that angle, and then out onto the ceiling, and then branch off in 4 different directions to go to each of the 4 height speakers. That was my initial plan. Now, at this point, I have to give a huge shout out to my brother, Forrest. He was over here the other day, and I was showing him what I had planned and kind of the status of the project. And he's looking around, and he's like, he says, there's a better way to do your height speaker wiring. And he asked me what was behind this wall, and there's really nothing behind this wall. It's just stairs on the other side of this wall. So in essence, this wall is empty. The other 3 walls are all exterior walls. Actually, that wall's not, but it doesn't matter. Those walls are exterior walls, so they're full of insulation. But this is an empty wall. And he's looking at it and he says, maybe you could run your cabling up through this wall and through the attic and then down through the ceiling and drop it down for the height speakers. And when he first said it, I was like, nah, I don't want to climb around in the attic. I've been up there before. I don't like going up there. I've already got the plan. I've already got the raceway. I'm already on track for my original plan. But he didn't press it. He just kind of threw it out there, and then that night, I think something kind of got working in my brain, and I woke up the next morning and I was thinking it over, and I was like, that's not a bad idea. It was like some Inception level stuff where he just like planted this idea in my brain, and it just started growing and growing until finally I had this fully formed idea of how to actually execute his idea, his plan. And so I went with his plan, and I am so glad that we did. Here's what we did. So Forrest came over and he helped me. I told him, I said, hey, this was your idea. You gotta help me out here because it's gonna take 2 people. So the first thing we did is we identified where we wanted the cables to come out of this wall here. And at that point, we cut a small little hole, and then right above it, we cut another hole behind the TV. Now, the reason for this second hole is so that we could feed the power cable and the HDMI cable for the TV through that hole and drop it down and have it come out the lower hole. So the lower hole will be the HDMI cable, power cable for the TV, and then the 4 height speaker wires. Okay, so then at that point, we identified that. We had those 2 holes cut, and then we went straight up from those 2 holes, directly up, and then we drilled a tiny little hole right there into the ceiling. And then we took a hanger, a wire hanger wire, I should say, unfolded a hanger wire, and then we shoved it up through that hole. Then I got up in the attic, and we had it all rigged up for me to be able to capture video of me up in the attic. Had some technical difficulties, didn't get any of that footage. But in hindsight, that's probably better because I don't think you want to see footage of me wheezing and huffing and puffing and struggling around in an attic. It was not pleasant. We'll just say that. But I got it done. So once we had that wire stuck up in there, then once I got up in the attic, using that wire, I was able to identify where we wanted the cable to come through. So I went a couple inches over from the hanger into the top plate that runs along that wall. And then I used a spade bit and I drilled a hole directly into that top plate. And then I took a string with a bolt attached to the end of it, and I lowered the string down into the wall. And Forrest was down here. And once the string got to this point, he grabbed the string, he hooked the cables to it, and then gave me the signal. And I pulled the cables up through the wall and into the attic. So once we got the 4 cables pulled up into the attic, then we did a similar thing at each point of the 4 height speakers. We identified where we wanted the speaker wire to drop down out of the ceiling. We drilled a tiny little hole. Forrest was down here. He put, one at a time, he put the wire, the hanger wire, up through the ceiling. So then I was able to identify where the hole was. I took one cable over there, we removed the wire, the hanger wire, and then I put the speaker wire through the hole and he pulled it through. And it is amazing. It is so clean. It is so tidy. It looks great. And I used a little cable bushing that we pushed up into the ceiling, and so that it kind of cleaned it up. So there's so where the wire actually enters the ceiling, it's got that little bushing there, little grommet, whatever you want to call it. So it just looks great. And we don't have cable raceway going up this corner. We don't have cable raceway going there. We don't have cable raceway spanning multiple directions across the ceiling. We don't have any of that. We just have clean little drops at each of the 4 locations, and I have my brother Forrest to thank for that idea. So thank you, Forrest. So that's how we ran the cable for the ceiling. Now, for the cabling at the ear level, I went with my original plan because for a couple reasons. One, it works having it run along the baseboard. You really don't notice it much at all. Plus, I wanted to show you guys what this option looks like so you can determine if it makes sense to do it in your theater. So I took the cable raceway, and first of all, I painted it. I color matched the walls. I got a quart of paint, and then I painted all of the pieces of the raceway so they blend in as well as they possibly can. And then I fed the cable, and then I took the cable, I measured out the 4 cables. So I got each cable cut to length, got them run along, and then I ran them through the cable raceway. And I will say, these first 2 sections where all 4 cables are in that raceway, dang, that was a tight fit. And I struggled and struggled and struggled to get those things in there, because the way it works, it's like a closing mechanism. So it's kind of it's like hinged, and then you put the cable in, and then it snaps shut, and then it's held secure. So I put the 4 cables in there, and getting that thing closed, oh, my thumbs are still very sore from that exercise. But I got those in those 2 sections, and then once I got it over here, then I was able to remove one of the cables, obviously, because it goes up and over to this side speaker. And then at that point, I only had 3 wires in the cable raceway. That was a breeze. And then once I got it down to 2, it was like no problem at all. Those went super fast. And then you'll see that I've got it running along the baseboard, and then just a short section that goes from the baseboard takes the cable up to the speaker. And I think it looks really good. Does it look as good as having the cable hidden inside the wall? No. But if you're in a finished room and this is your best option, I think it looks pretty darn good. And I'm very pleased with the results. When I'm sitting here and I'm watching a movie, I guarantee I am not going to see any of these cables. And so I am very happy with how the cabling turned out. Now, all the ends of the cables, you guys know if you watch my channel that I am a big fan of banana plugs. So I put banana plugs on every cable end, got those all fitted out. And then now, here in the front, everything it's great. It just looks great here in the front. This is all going to be hidden behind my shelves that I've got, that I'm going to have here. All my equipment is going to set on these shelves, and it's all going to be hidden behind the equipment. I've got here the 4 cables, the 4 height speaker cables that come out of the wall. That looks really tidy, very nice. I bought a really nice plate with kind of a feed through that the cables can come through. I've got my network switch. I've got one internet port, one active internet port here. That goes down to my basement where it plugs into my network hub, my network switch. Not a hub. This is not 1999. Got that plugged into my switch. So I am a big fan of having all equipment be hardwired. And so I plugged in a gigabit network switch into that port. So now I've got 4 ports. I'll be able to plug in my AVR, my Apple TV, my Zadoo. What else? I've got some other stuff in the works. But I'll be able to plug it all in. So everything will be hardwired into that network switch. And then I've got this beauty. This is cool. So this power strip, it's not just a power strip. This is a Wattbox surge protector / power conditioner. So it cleans up the power, removes all those hisses and interference and just kind of nastiness that comes in over your power lines. And it cleans it up, and it sends clean power to your electronics, which extends the life of your electronics. So it does that. It's also a surge protector. And it's really cool because you can mount this thing to the back of a rack. It comes with 2 different sets of mounts. So it's like basically infinitely flexible in how it can be mounted. And so for my purposes, I've got it mounted to the wall, and I've got it angled up. Initially, I mounted it angled out, and then I thought about it. I'm like, wait a second, it's going to be sticking out, and then I'm going to have plugs sticking in, and the equipment's going to be right behind it, and wires going to be sticking into that equipment. It's going to be too much. I'm like, I'm going to turn it up so that the plugs come down, and I think that'll be better. But if at some point I want to switch it, it's super easy. I can just unscrew it from the mounts, leave the mounts in the wall, unscrew the sides, flip it however I want it, screw it back in, done. This is a really cool product, this Wattbox power conditioner surge protector. You have to, they're not available directly to consumers. You have to buy it through a dealer. I am a dealer, so if you're interested in this, hit me up, or find a Wattbox dealer that can get it for you. They're really, really cool. And then I took all of my speaker wires, and I like tidying up cables, and so I used Velcro to clean them up, basically create like a speaker wire pigtail, so everything's nice and tidy. And at this point, everything for cabling, I believe, is done, and this thing is ready to run. So next step is, well, I'm debating. I've got a couple different options. There's lots to be done left to do with this theater, so stay tuned. I've got a lot more videos coming. But yeah, for now, things are looking great. And thanks for watching.